Hello, my name is Fernanda Batista. I use pronouns she and her, and I'm speaking to you today from Seneca Polytechnic. This workshop is called The Writing Process, Steps to Help You with Your Writing. Seneca's campuses are located on the land stewarded by Anishinaabe, Haudenosaunee, and Wendat nations. We acknowledge Treaty 13, the Toronto Purchase, signed with the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation, and the Williams Treaty, signed with multiple Mississauga and Chippewa First Nations. We are all interconnected as treaty people with a shared obligation to learn, respect, honor, and sustain. And many of you may be watching this from all over Turtle Island, a name many Indigenous peoples use for North America and around the world. I encourage you to seek out whose ancestral lands you are on today. The goal of this presentation is to allow you to recognize writing as a process, to identify the steps of the writing process, and to implement a process that works for you in your writing. So the first thing I want to ask you is, what do you want to learn in this workshop? Why are you watching it? So take a minute to think about that. You can even pause the video. And then once you're ready, you move on and continue watching, okay? And then I have a few more questions to initiate a reflection for you. So what is your writing process like? So for example, when you were given an assignment to write, how do you typically approach writing your assignment? For example, when do you start working? And what steps do you take when writing assignments? What are some actions that you take to be able to complete that writing assignment? Again, take a minute, think about your answers to these questions, and then when you're ready, continue with the video. So the writing process in the way we're going to discuss in this presentation today is the model from Cordell and Pennington. So it has 8 steps or stages. The first one being pre-writing, the second one researching, the third one outlining, the fourth one drafting, the fifth one revising, the sixth one seeking feedback, the seventh one re-revising, and the eighth one submitting or publishing. Submitting for marking, for example, or for feedback, and then publishing in the case of an article that you're going to publish in a journal, for example, or a book if you're a writer. But yeah, we're going to talk about these 8 stages or steps. They are not linear, okay? So you might come a little bit back and forth among them, but it's just a framework for us to think about what actions to perform in order to complete a writing assignment in a way that is not overwhelming. And I'll make references to some of actions that we sometimes make or take that are overwhelming, that are too taxing on our cognitive skills, and then how having a process such as this one, but tweaked to our own personalities and preferences, can be helpful. So the first stage or step in the writing process is to reflect on what we need to do, right? So in the case of a university or college assignment, the first thing we should do when we're assigned a writing activity is to reflect on the instructions, the readings we've been doing in the class, the lectures, the contents we've been taught. So think about what it is that we need to do, what it is that we need to show through our writing. And then make connections between our experiences and the test that we want to write. So what do I already know? What did I already learn in this class? And what do I want to say in my writing? And then we start jotting down ideas inspired by our engagement with the ideas that we have learned. So if you look at the picture I have there, we see some people writing small things on Post-it notes, perhaps writing a list like bulletin points. So yeah, start jotting down options for what you're going to say in your writing after you have reflected on what it is that you need to do and what it is that you want to do. And then the second stage is when you're going to probably have to learn more about the topic, especially in a university and college context. You're asked to write about things that you perhaps may not be an expert in. You may not know those things yet. So you're going to learn about that. So that's the research, right? You're going to seek a wide range of texts to supplement your understanding of the topic and also to provide authority to your understanding. Who else has discussed this topic? Who else has studied this topic in depth that I can borrow ideas from? So again, it's a wide range of texts. If you look at the picture, we have a very traditional portrait of research, because we have a student in the library reading from a book and then taking notes by hand in a notebook. This is one way research can happen, but this wide range of texts can be found in different ways, right? You can go to the library, you can go to the library website, you can use Google Scholar, you can use open search engines, and nowadays you can even start the research process using generative AI tools such as ChatGPT or Copilot. You can type some questions there, and that's your first step for research. So many different ways. There are many different ways of doing research. This portrayal here is just one of them, more classic. But what is important while you do your research is to also keep a record of what you agree with and can use later on, and what else you need explanation on, so that you have something to build upon, right? So if you keep a record of the main points that you might use in your text later, you will remember those points. You will have a record. And also, if you ask yourself more questions, you will know where to search or what to search for later to continue learning. So it's really important that whichever text you will read or get in contact with to learn more about the topic that you're going to write about, it's really important that you take notes somehow, right? Maybe you'll type your notes. Maybe you will even record yourself explaining what you understand from those notes. And then it's an audio file, or even an audio file converted to text. If you use Word, for example, there is the dictate function. Maybe you will say to yourself what it is that you understood, and then dictate in Word will get it translated into text. And then you will have that file with you. But taking notes is really important, right? So that you remember the main points and can refer back to it without having to read the texts again or listen to the text again or watch the texts again. But yeah, once you have your research, you will probably then have an idea, a better idea of what you want to say. And then one step that can help you get the writing done in a way that is not super overwhelming is to sketch the ideas out on paper or on the screen to see where you really want to go. So what are the steps you're going to follow? So which ideas are you going to discuss and in which order? And with which extent or degree of details? So creating an outline, right? That's what we're talking about here. So once you sketch your ideas, you can play around with them to see if the sequence that you're presenting them in makes sense and is satisfactory to you. And if they're not, you can tweak and change and add things and remove things. And an outline can be super detailed or less detailed. That really depends on how long you want to spend creating the outline. If you have more time to spend here, the next step is going to be shorter. If you do a very short outline just with the general topics you're going to talk about in each paragraph, then the next step is going to take longer. Okay, so it's a matter of choice. My recommendation would be to have a clear understanding of the ideas and perhaps some level of details. For example, the evidence you're going to use to support each of the points that you're making in each paragraph. You don't need to have the full citation, but at least if you have a summary of what's the idea and how am I proving it, so what and how, then later, once you were drafting your paragraphs, you were to have somewhere to begin from, rather than just then having to formulate everything from scratch. So yeah, your outline is then a list of the ideas you want to talk about. Could be a very brief list or a little bit with a little bit of detail. Then comes the drafting. which is the part where we write our ideas in paragraph form. So it's the first time here, step 4, that you will have paragraphs or quotes writing, right? The writing will begin. One thing that is important to think about, and that's why it's named drafting there instead of writing, is that your first paragraphs, the first time you write your ideas in paragraph, that's not going to be perfect, and it doesn't have to be perfect. It's better that it be out there, even if imperfect, incomplete, than in here, because once it's out there, it's concrete, it's recorded, you can come back to and make better. If it's just here, you forget. It gets harder and harder sometimes to stop and write down. So just get ideas out. Once you have done the research, you have a direction to go, just get them out, and worry about making them perfect later, right? They just need to be at this point. You're going to improve on them little by little. So a little bit every day for a few days or a few weeks, depending how long you have to complete the assignment. But yeah, having the ideas written down in paragraph form. So have that done. Aim to have that done early so that you can come back and perfect it, work on it, and do the process that works best for you. So in this picture, we see somebody writing by hand. So a pencil on paper. You can type it. And I mentioned before the dictate tool that is available in Word. You can even speak your paragraph to Word, right? Click on dictate, speak, and then it will transcribe into text. And then later, once you have the text, you can work on trimming it, tweaking it, making it sound good to your taste, to your liking. But yeah, aim to have your paragraphs early in your assignment cycle, because then you can come back to it, okay? If the first time you're writing your paragraphs is the night before the assignment is due, for example, there isn't much time to refine those paragraphs, right? So the earlier you start, the better, the more time you'll have for the next steps, because this is just step 4. And again, drafting, you're going to keep developing, right? The draft is not going to be perfect yet. But one thing I want to mention here, because we're approaching the middle of the process, is that you might get to drafting and realize that you need to go back to brainstorming. You need more ideas, or you need to go back to research and learn more in depth about one topic. You need to go more in depth, or you need to broaden or even narrow down your point. So learn more about something or learn about more things to add. That's a completely normal to have to go back and then come to write more. Okay, so if that happens to you, don't despair, put the drafting aside, do the research, and then come back with those ideas to add. Okay, but again, if you take the time to do your research, take your notes, outline, chances are that once you're drafting, it will flow better. If you are quick in the research, don't take notes, don't outline, then maybe when you get to the drafting, you will have to come back and do those steps more thoroughly. But again, it will work. It's just a matter of organizing your writing in the way that works best for you. And separating the steps can help you also not have to do too many things at once, so it can be less overwhelming. That's why it's my recommendation that you spend some time at each stage. But again, once you're here, if you need to go back, that's fine. Just do that. Leave this behind for a while, do the research, take your notes, outline, add those ideas into your outline, and then continue drafting. Okay. And then, so we're only in the middle of the process roughly here. So the next step is, once you have your paragraphs done, let's say you have from your introduction to your conclusion, you have at least a tentative reference list, right, with the texts where you borrowed the ideas from. Then comes the revising stage. So that's where you read your text as your readers will. So with a certain distance from that topic. And asking yourself skeptical questions. For example, are there clear connections between the different ideas or claims that I'm making in this paper? Do I provide enough evidence to convince someone to believe my ideas or claims? So that's how your prof will read your assignments, right? They're gonna want to see connections between the different ideas because that's a text. So each paragraph has one topic, but one topic leads to the next, and then those two together lead to the next, and then those three lead to the next. You're building off of something, right? You're connecting those very well. So the prof will want to see that. And also in academic writing, the prof will want to see evidence to support the points that you're making. So whatever you're claiming, who else has already studied that? Who else has learned and shared their knowledge about that you're using to strengthen your points, to support your points? So your prof will want that, will want to see that. So when you're revising your paper, try to read with those eyes, revise with those eyes of, do I do all of these? And if you notice that you're not doing some of these, so if your answer is no, go back there and create those connections, or go back to your research and find the evidence, or maybe do even more research and then add it here to make sure you have that, okay? So revising stage is where you look for big problems, let's say. It's higher order skills of clarity, connection, coherence between the ideas, and also support to the ideas. So making the ideas convincing, okay? At this stage, you don't worry about small things such as punctuation, spelling, formatting, like APA style or other styles. Obviously, if you notice something, you can go and fix it, but you should be looking at ideas first of all, the big issues that there may be in an essay, okay? So there you go, it's the revising stage. Then once you have revised, oh, just one second. Hi, Tanya, welcome. I'm gonna start talking about the 6th stage, which comes after revising, seeking feedback. Just because nobody was here, so I was recording something so folks can watch later, but I'm happy to go over everything with you in a few minutes. Is that okay?
Oh, hi. Yes, thank you.
Perfect. Thank you. All right. So we're going to start in stage 6 of the writing process, Tanya. So I've already talked about 5 and we're going to finish in 8. So we're going to talk about 6, 7, 8, and then I'm happy to talk to you about the others. All right. Okay. So seeking feedback after you have revised your text for clarity, connection of ideas, and enough evidence. It's a very good practice to seek feedback. So give your writing, your assignment to someone else to read. What I suggest is that you book your college or university's learning center tutors. So have a tutor read your assignment with you and provide suggestions, ask questions, right? Provide commentary. That's one good way to approach this. Another good way is if there are opportunities in class for peer review activities where students exchange assignments. That's great. Use that as well. And sometimes even the instructor, the professor, can take a look at your writing and provide feedback on which areas you should improve. They can check there which ideas are not clear, what kind of evidence you could add that would make your assignment stronger, and other things. So the professor might be an option. If for some reason you can't get, for example, a classmate in a peer-reviewed activity, or the professor can't read your assignment, and a tutor in your college's or university's learning center cannot see your assignment in time, and you have someone in your family, a friend, someone you trust that could read that with you and then ask questions again, provide commentary, do that. I usually do get my family members to read what I wrote and comment on it. Okay, just because they don't know what we were thinking when we wrote, so they can listen or read more objectively. And if there are gaps in connections or clarity, they'll catch more easily than we will, right? So it's a good idea to ask for feedback from those people, right? And then they will give feedback. So if we ask, they'll give feedback. Then it's up to us to work a little bit more on that writing and revise. So 7th stage, revising. So just one more comment about seeking feedback. Feedback might be personal. It might get personal. It's hard to hear like criticism on something we worked hard on. Try not to make it personal. Try to take it like this person is suggesting things I can improve on this writing, this piece of paper, or in this document. It's not about you. It's about what is there written on the page. And if they're providing suggestions, comments, it's because they believe you can improve on those. They believe you can do better, right? So they have your best interest at heart, and they are considering you as capable of doing better than that. So try not to take it too personally, try not to be offended. It's only an opportunity for growth, right? So listen to what they say with an open heart and an open mind. But again, you are the writer. It's your job to then keep working on the assignment. And that means that some suggestions that may have been made, you're not going to use those suggestions, right? They don't make sense to what you're actually trying to do. But even if those suggestions don't make sense, it's possible that you're going to tweak something else to then create that clarity that may not have been there first. Okay, so after you receive feedback, think about the suggestions. And then make sure that the ones that are helpful, you can incorporate. But again, it's your choice. It's your writing. You decide what to incorporate, what not. Okay, so spend time there re-revising. And then here in re-revising is a good idea for you to look at the small things too in your text. So making sure that all your sentences are complete, right? You have all the words that you want to have there. Nothing is missing, nothing is extra. That your spelling is accurate, that your punctuation is accurate, that your formatting, let's say if you're using APA style. So your APA formatting, citations, spaces on the page, font, references, all of that is done correctly. So that's a good time to check all of that, right? For sure, take a look at the whole paper for the big things, but also the small things. Make sure that they're all good here so that you can then move on to the 8th stage or step, where you're going to submit your paper for your audience to review. In the case of your class assignments, for your instructor or professor to grade, right? To provide a grade on, to evaluate. So for submission, make sure you understand how you need to submit and by when. So follow the deadline. It's very important. If you notice that you're going to miss the deadline, always contact your professor as early as possible to explain the situation and request an extension. Usually professors are understanding when the students get in contact early, and they will accommodate the needs, but do it as early as possible, okay? And pay attention to how to submit, right? If your professor, for example, wants you to submit a PDF file, don't send an email, right? Or don't send a Word document. If they want you to submit in Word document, don't submit a Google Doc or don't submit a PDF, submit a Word document. If they want you to print the paper and give it to them by hand, make sure you have that there, right? Don't send an email. Things like that. So it's important to know the format, like how to submit, where, by when, and follow those as closely as possible. Again, if something comes up, talk to the professor. Communication is important, but if nothing extraordinary is happening, just follow the instructions there. And then we're done with the writing process, right? 8th step, that's the 8th step. Well, sort of. Once you get your mark back, there will be some comments made. That's also part of feedback. So it's almost like we're coming back to stage 6th of seeking feedback. You won't be able to use it for this assignment anymore, but those comments, those areas for development, those areas where we are doing well, we can use that information for the next time we're writing. So once you receive a grade, don't just look at the grade and that's it. Look at the comments. And if you have any questions about what a comment means, ask your professor, because that can help you, again, improve for your next assignment. You can incorporate those suggestions next time, right? Now it might be too late, you already got a grade, that's it. But for the next time, it might be useful. So make sure to do that, to consider the feedback you get or the grade you get, the comments you get, as valuable information that can take you one step higher in your development in writing. Okay. And that's what famous writers do, right? They submit, and then an editor will comment for them to know which areas they should perhaps change. And then they go and they change that. And then every time they write a book or a short story, whatever it is, an article, that informs how they're going to write the next one, right? They know better for the next time. So do that as well for your assignments. But yeah, then that's it. We got through the eight steps of the writing process. So I will have a final reflection for you. Maybe take 1 minute to think about this. What steps discussed in this presentation are you going to implement in your writing moving forward? So was there any step that you already don't take that you would like to take? Which one is it? So we discussed pre-writing, researching, outlining, drafting, revising, seeking feedback, re-revising, and then submitting. Which of the steps do you think will be most useful for you? So take some time, think about it, and then happy writing. Thank you for joining. Thank you for watching. It was my pleasure to talk to you a little bit about the writing process. Bye, all the best.